Hey, Riv, it's Noel, one of the pastors, and if you can believe it, it has been, as of this weekend, 10 weeks that we have been streaming services and not meeting in person. And I found myself reflecting on a passage in 1 Thessalonians where the Apostle Paul writes this. He says, "But as for us, brothers and sisters, after we were forced to leave you for a short time in person, not in heart, we greatly desired and made every effort to return and see you face to face. So we wanted to come to you, even I, Paul, time and again, but Satan hindered us. For who is our hope or joy or crown of boasting in the presence of our Lord Jesus at his coming? Is it not you? Indeed, you are our glory and our joy." All of that passage is so true. It just feels like our time. We are forced to leave one another for a short time, not just in person, not in our hearts, right? And we greatly desire to see each other face to face again. And I love that he says, he's like, who is our hope? Who is our joy? Who is our crown of boasting? And normally our answer would be Jesus. But he says, no, in the presence of Jesus, when we're with Jesus, you are. You're our hope. You're our joy. You're our crown of boasting. You're our glory. All of those. Why is the Apostle Paul being so gushy? Well, he tells us in 1 Thessalonians that they were people who obeyed in the midst of suffering and who showed themselves to be followers of Jesus based on how they lived. And here, as we are in our 10th week, I want to say on behalf of the pastors, you're our glory and joy. We are in this crazy season where we've been forced apart from each other, in person, if not in heart, and we can't wait to see you again face to face. And we have watched and we have heard, as you guys have heard the word and obeyed, and everything that we're hearing, you guys are just representing Jesus so well. And you can know this, Jesus' church has faced this sort of thing before. In 1 Peter, the passage that we're covering on the weekend services, in 1 Thessalonians, in the book of Acts, the Black Plague in Martin Luther's time, the Spanish flu in the early 1900s, and the gospel has always been faithfully proclaimed by Jesus' people like you, as they have been forced apart from one another for a short period of time. And so I can't wait to hear the stories of what God has done in and through you in this season when we're finally able to return with one another. And you can know that we are working really hard behind the scenes, planning for that day when we're going to be able to be back together again. And we want to be guided by three biblical principles as we kind of plan forward. And the first is submission to authority. We want to be godly people who yield to the authorities that God has placed in our lives. We want to be people filled with wisdom, and we want to be guided by loving one another. And this is what we mean by that. When we say submission, we're going to do everything we can to seek to obey our governing authorities because that's what Jesus' people do. It is our gospel witness in our culture. As we stand in our culture, a little bit apart from our culture, as strangers and aliens in our posture in these times. The second thing is we want to be wise. And what that means is we may make some decisions on starting or stopping services that are faster than some people think they should be or slower than other people think they should be. And you can just know that we have teams that are meeting every week, not just with our teams, but also with other churches. And we're trying to be as wise as we can be right now, knowing that none of us has perfect wisdom. And you could be praying for us on that front. And we want to gather together again, and we want to at the same time follow safe guidelines on things like, how close we can be to one another, both for our adults in our big rooms and the small rooms with our kids. And so you may or may not agree with how we end up approaching these things, but just hold on to that third principle, and that is that we want to love one another. Jesus said, they will know that you are my followers based on your love for one another. And one of the greatest gospel moments that we have ahead of us as a church is how we choose to be gracious to one another when we inevitably, passionately, and vehemently disagree. over some of this stuff. And so I'm just praying that our passion for Jesus and our passion for his reputation will be greater than our personal convictions or viewpoints or preferences or any of those sorts of things. And so just know that we love you. We can't wait to be back together with you in person again. And until then, please be safe. Please be wise. Please be loving. And we will continue to see you online as we continue to proclaim the liberating power of the gospel in our community. Love you. God bless.